There was a cold northerly wind blowing down the glen as I headed off, and on today's adventure I was heading for some wild empty spaces and landscapes, and ideally looking for a lonely loch to wild camp up high up in the mountains at the top of this glen. Oh dear, got a wee rest here. Well, good morning people, how are we doing? I am on a mission today, and my mission is to do a high camp up at a remote loch surrounded by the Scottish mountains. And I tell you what, it's not a warm day. We're well into spring now, but at the moment there's a northerly air mass that's covering Scotland, and there's a slight northerly breeze coming right down this glen. So to quicken things up a bit, although I'm not sure if it's quickened things up on the way in, but it'll certainly quicken things up on the way out as I've brought my bike. And if you can see behind the camera, you can see the end of the glen, and I'm going to put the bike down there, lock up, and then it's about a 300 metre ascent hike up to the loch, and then set my tent up and decide whether I'm going to go up a few mountains today or tomorrow. But the forecast is improving, so yeah, I'm going to sit here and get a bite to eat before heading on. It's lovely. I've been cycling for about an hour, and yeah, the clouds above the summit, it's all looking good. So time to shut up, get something to eat, and then get going again. Oh dear. Right, as you can see, that's me off the bike now, and the track, it goes on a wee bit further on the other side of the river here, but I'm deciding to leave the bike here. I think it's pretty rough further up, so it's time to sort of transfer all my camping gear and gear out of the pannier rack into the rucksack. I mean, this thing's fine. It's taking a bit of the weight off my shoulders. It's not ideal though. The track was a wee bit rough at times, and with all the weight being on the back wheel, it can make it a bit unsteady, but still, it's speeded things up, and it will certainly speed up progress on the way down. So it's about another couple of kilometres. I'm just underneath the 500 metre contour at the moment, and the loch that I'm going to camp at sits at about, I think it's about 780 metres. So yeah, another couple of hundred metres of ascent up behind me here, following the river up past the waterfalls, and then I'll hopefully try and find a spot to pitch the tent, and from that point I'll decide on what I'm going to do after I've done that. But for now I need to start unloading my bike rack and fitting it all into my rucksack. This next bit of the walk is going to be torture. Right, let's do it. So I started to unpack my camping gear from the bike rack and put it into my rucksack, and I must admit I wasn't looking forward to this part of the hike with all my camping gear now in my rucksack. All that weight was sitting squarely on my shoulders, and having that extra weight makes the walking a bit tougher. Anyway, as I made my way up towards the head of the glen, the path started to steepen, but there was a lovely burn running beside the path, and the waterfalls that tumbled down it were just lovely to see. It was a cracking wee path, and before long I felt I was getting towards the head of the glen and my intended camp spot, which was the remote loch. As I gained height, I started to encounter some snow patches, but with walking uphill with that heavy pack on, I was burning some calories and generating some heat, so I'd already taken one of my jackets off, and as I reached the top of the burn to the outflow from the loch, I was in a bit more open space, and there was a welcome cool breeze wisping across the loch. All I needed to do now was try and find a pitch to put the camp up and spend the night. The local wildlife were letting themselves be heard when I reached the shores of the loch, And I scouted about for a wee while and eventually found a lovely flat piece of land, and almost like a peninsula that jutted out into the loch. And I got a wee bit of shelter behind a peat hag and set about getting the tent up, the sleeping bag ready, and everything all set for a night under the stars. Oh, look at this, eh? Not a bad spot. And as you can see, that's me now at the high loch where I've pitched the tent. And had there not been as much of a breeze, I would have actually pitched it here on this wee promontory of land. This is a wee sort of peninsula which juts out into the loch, and it'd be a lovely spot. As it is, I've pitched it maybe 10 metres behind the spot underneath a peat hag to give me some shelter, because there is a keen, shall we say, northerly wind coming in, sort of north-northeasterly, right across the loch here. And I just thought if I pitched up here, I'm really exposed, and during the night if the wind picks up, it probably wouldn't be the best place to be. So I've got a wee bit of shelter just behind where we are at the moment. But it's lovely. I've kind of dotted about a wee while. It took me quite a while to decide where to put the tent, and the weather was quite sunny earlier on, and it was meant to improve, but this cloud's moved in now. It's not warm, relatively cold at the moment, and my plan is I think I'm going to try and go up a mountain now. It is 2:30 in the afternoon, and there are 3 or 4 Munros that you can do from here. It's quite a remote feeling area. It takes a bit of effort to get here, and certainly to do some of the Munros. The one that I'm going to do does take a bit of effort to get to. It's not one of these where you can just leave your car at the side of the road and and take a wee jaunt up it. There's a bit of effort required, but this is just fantastic. There's still some patches of snow left over from the winter, and yeah, it's just a wild place. Feels sort of tundra-like, shall we say, maybe Scandinavian. I don't know, but it's quite high. We're about 800 metres here, just below 800 metres, so hopefully that means that the hike to the hill isn't going to be too bad. So yeah, I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to get my bag packed up, and I'm going to go and see if I can get up this mountain. I'll report back in a wee while. Right, let's go. Well, there's a path of sorts here. I tell you what, now that I'm moving, this is hot work. I think what I might do here is I might stop and take this big jacket off, because I can see now behind the camera, I can see the path snaking away, and it's starting to head up to the mountain that I'm going up, which is called Righ. And it's about, oh god, I don't know the height, it's 1,029 metres, something like that. Anyway, and it feels really nice and remote here. It's got that feeling of a wild place. I can't see any civilization. I can't see anybody else on the mountain. We are quite late now, so I wouldn't expect any day trippers to be here. We're now past 3 o'clock, and the cloud still isn't shifting. But you know what? If that cloud doesn't shift, it might make for a nice sunset, because it's clear out to the west. But that's not what I need to worry about just now. What I need to worry about just now is getting up this mountain, which is looking rather fabulous. So I'm going to delayer here, and then we'll get cracked on. So I delayered, took that big jacket off, and headed for the first mountain, Righ. And at this point I wasn't sure if I was just going to go up here and then come back down, or maybe combine it with Beinn Lutharn Mhor, which is another Munro which sits not too far away. That decision was still to be made, but things were looking good. The sun wasn't out yet, but the forecast was suggesting it was on its way. And before long I was reaching the summit of Righ, and the sun decided to accompany me to the summit. Things were looking good. Well, here I am on the summit of Righ, and it does feel very remote. Although when I say remote, people that are watching, if you're watching this in Alaska, you'll be laughing saying, haha, remote, you got there in a day. But relatively speaking, in Scotland, it's one of the mountains which is a bit harder to get to in comparison to other mountains in Scotland. But the sun's coming out now. What time are we at? It's past 4 o'clock. And I've just been taking my time. It's lovely, and it does feel, you do feel a bit cut off here, but there's just so many mountains, and it's been a wee while since I've been up this one. I've done it once before, probably about 20 years ago when I did, I think it was 5, but I can only count 4 in my head at the moment. But anyway, me and my pal came up Glas-Tualachen, came up here and then over to Beinn Lutharn Mhor. I don't know, I'm sure there was another one, but we ended up in Ansocach. And it was a big round, but that's when we were young and fit. I'm just ambling along today. Although I tell you what, I've still got about 4 hours of daylight left, maybe 5. I'm actually thinking of heading over to do Beinn Lutharn Mhor, which is just over here, basked in the sunshine at the moment. And I can see Glas-Tualachen as well. That's another one you can fit into this round as well, which is just to the south of us here. And then over here, we're not far from the head of Glen Tilt. And I can see the western end of the Beinn Mountains from here, and then beyond that into Tarf and these sort of places. But it's lovely. I'm going to sit here for a while. I've got a couple of Scotch eggs, which is very appropriate because they're a snack made for a king, or fit for a king, should I say. And this hill is Righ means Hill of the King, I think, or Hill of the Shieling, but I prefer Hill of the King. So I'll have a Scotch egg on the Hill of the King and decide on whether I'm going to head over to Beinn Lutharn Mhor tonight or maybe do it tomorrow. We'll see. Oh, here comes the sun. Ah, lovely. Absolutely perfect. Yeehaw. Having enjoyed my Scotch egg, I headed off the summit of Righ and decided that I was going to go and try to get up the second Munro, Beinn Lutharn Mhor. It's lots of daylight at this time of year, so yeah, I wasn't rushing. I knew I'd have enough time to get up this mountain and back again, and I didn't want to tire myself out. But it was lovely. The sun was now shining down and the views were opening up, and it was just a cracking day. And about halfway across, I decided that I wanted a second Scotch egg, so I took that backpack off and sat my bum down on a well-placed rock to enjoy views back to the mountain I'd just come up from. Second Scotch egg had, and it was now time to get going and get up that second Munro. And this area, as I've mentioned before, it does feel very remote and wild. And there's none of these jagged peaks that you get in the west coast, but the wilderness feel here is just fantastic. And these hills are called the West Month Hills, and they kind of lie in an area to the east of Glen Shee and stretch over towards the head of Glen Tilt. Before that range of mountains, Beinn stretches down towards the A9, and there's not much in between. Anyway, I was soon approaching the second summit, and I was glad to get up here. I'd actually been standing here the previous year, and it looked rather familiar. A grand viewpoint. Ooh. Big cairn at the top of this one. Oh, so this is Beinn Lutharn Mhor. And if you remember, I think it was last year, I was actually up this same hill. But I came up at, what's the name of the glen? I think it's Glen I, which is to the north. That's the way I came up the last time, which is over this way. And it was a long trip as well. So this is another Munro, which is quite difficult to get to. It's quite far away from the nearest roads, and yeah, there's a bit of a breeze up here, but it's dying down. The skies are turning blue. It's just lovely. And what time are we at now? Back at 6, so we've got a couple of hours of daylight left. As much as I'd love to stay up here to watch the sun going down, I'm going to try and get back to the tent and get something to eat. I haven't done much since I left Righ because I dropped my camera. I couldn't believe it. I'm hoping this works, but I've smashed the back screen on my good camera, which is really, yeah, you wouldn't have wanted me to video what I was saying. Profanity's coming out of my mouth when I did it. Just carelessness. What an idiot. But anyway, hopefully this comes out okay. The viewfinder's still working, and I'm hoping it's recording okay. So yeah, I'm going to sit here, enjoy a bit of the sunshine, and then it's back to the tent, round the side of the hill and down to the Loch for the night. And maybe, I think I've earned a wee dram tonight. So we'll report back later on and I'll let you know what dram I'm drinking. But let's just take 5 minutes of a breather just now before heading on. So with the sun starting to lower in the sky, I made my way back round the hills towards the loch where the tent was. It was still a fair distance away, but I just took my time, didn't want to rush. There's not much in the way of civilization here. It's not a place you'd want to slip and fall. And before long, I got a view of the loch and the campsite. What a place it is. And you get a sense here of the openness and wildness of the surroundings. Anyway, you can see the breeze was still wisping around the tent when I got back, but yeah, I was glad to reach the tent after a long day getting into the campsite and then the round of the two mountains. I was looking forward to my tea and a wee dram by the campfire as the skies got darker. Right, that's me back in the tent, as you can see, and I've had my dinner, and I must admit I'm quite tired now. I'm looking forward to my whiskey, that's for sure, but the sun's just gone down out to the west. It was lovely. I think it's Acoustic over there. It was bathed in light, but you know what, I couldn't be bothered getting the camera ready and taking pictures, but a wee bit of pink cloud up behind me there, it's lovely. And I've just noticed there's an osprey. There's also some seagulls, funnily enough, but there's an osprey kicking about. I don't know if I got any footage of it on the camera, but it's certainly circling around the loch, and I was watching that for a wee while. But I tell you what, the wind's picked up as well. It's a wee bit windier than it was earlier on now. When I was on the summits, I was able to check the forecast, and the wind is to die down a wee bit overnight. So hopefully that happens, and then tomorrow, we'll see what happens tomorrow. I quite fancy going up this wee hill over here. Or maybe this one here, we'll play it by ear. I'm not too sure, but for the next wee while I'm just going to go and retire into the tent, listen to some music, and maybe have a wee dram. I'll report back later. As daylight started to fade and dusk turned to night, I got a wee fire going on my fire stove in a wee shieling, a wee ruin. I don't know if it was an old boathouse or maybe an old house from hundreds of years ago, I don't know, but it provided a wee bit of shelter, and yeah, it was just lovely to get the wee fire going and get my hip flask out and nibble on some treats whilst waiting for the stars to appear above me. Well, this is just lovely. I've got my wee stove. There is an old fire pit in this there's a wee shieling here, which is providing some shelter from the wind. So somebody's obviously had a fire here, but what I've done is I've put a stone down, I put my stove on top of it, and put it in the fire pit. So being ultra careful here, but it's just nice getting the fire going. Still a bit of a cold wind, to be honest with you. It's freezing. I can see my breath. The sun's gone down, as you can tell, and the stars are out, and it's lovely. And I can see my tent. My tent's maybe about 10 metres over just towards the loch there. It's going to be I think it's going to be a cold night, but I've got all the gear, so it should be fine. Anyway, another thing that's warming me up is my wee dram here. Got my wee dram, and today I've got another one of my favourites, is tomatin, and it's a whisky. If you've driven up the A9 towards Inverness, you'll have seen the tomatin sign. It's a Highland whisky. It's lovely. Can highly recommend it. And I was going to say, the area that I'm in at the moment is right in I'd say the heart of Scotland, but in terms of the Highlands, it's on the eastern side of the Highlands. And although this is within the Cairngorm National Park, I don't see this as a Cairngorm. I see these hills round about here in this area as it's kind of the eastern Highlands, and there's something wild about them. They don't have the dramatic peaks like the West Coast hills, but they certainly have a wild feel about them, and they feel remote. And you often see a lot of wildlife up in these hills. Really are great. So I'm going to sit here, have my whisky, enjoy the rest of this fire before hitting the hay, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings. I might go and do a hill tomorrow, I might not. I'll see what happens when we wake up, but I'm just enjoying this at the moment. Enjoying this, my peanuts and my whisky. Not bad. I sat and watched the last embers of the fire die away and had the last of my whisky, whilst Orion was high in the sky out to the west, and it slowly dipped below the horizon, and before long Orion's going to disappear from the night sky until the autumn time next winter. It was going to be a cold night, but I got my head down and tried to get some sleep in preparation for another day in the hills tomorrow. It was a cold start, and I'd certainly felt the cold during the night, and a layer of frost covered the tent when I woke up. But before long the sun breached the mountains to the east and started to bathe the campsite in sun, which was just lovely. So I set about getting my breakfast on and some coffee. Well, this is absolutely glorious, look at this. And the sun is out, as you can see I've even got my sunglasses on the top of my head. It's an absolutely stunning morning. I woke this morning and the wind had dropped right down. There was nothing. There's a wee bit of a breeze picked up now, as you can probably see by the ripples on the surface of the loch here. But it's just glorious. There's not a cloud in the sky. Blue skies, bright sunshine, and although it was really cold last night, I didn't sleep very well. It's quite windy. I'm kind of glad that I pitched behind that peat hag to give me some shelter. I think if I'd pitched up here, it would have been unbearable. But it was quite strong winds. But anyway, it's dropped down. There's a frost. It's looking good. And what I'm planning to do now, I've had my breakfast. I had another Scotch egg and a bar of Snickers and a big vat of coffee. So I'm feeling good. So I'm going to go up another hill, and I'm going to go up this hill over here behind me. And that's the little brother or little sister of the second hill I went up last night, Beinn Lutharn Mhor. This one here is Beinn Lutharn Beg, which means small. Beg and Mhor, or Mhor, is big and small, I think, if memory serves me right. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm just going to take my time. Once I've done that hill, I'll come back down. I'll probably break down the tent then, and then I've still got a bit of an adventure to get back out of here. So yeah, let's get the bag packed and let's start walking up this hill. Looking forward to it. Oh. Things were looking good for my third hill of the outing, and yeah, the sun was splitting the sky, to be honest with you, and I headed around the Loch towards Beinn Lutharn Mhor, which was going to be my third peak. And as I headed up, the wind started to drop and it was feeling quite warm, but some of those snow patches are stubborn, and I had to get my ice axe out in bits and kick some steps just to be on the safe side before reaching more rocky open ground on the slopes up to the summit. As I gained height, the views started to open out again, and unlike yesterday where it was a wee bit hazy, the clarity of the air this morning was just absolutely fabulous, and it was still relatively early. And as I'd thought, I hadn't really met that many people. There was a good bit of solitude on this trip, which was, well, right up my alleyway. Anyway, I soon reached the summit, but I decided to move on just a bit further because I thought there was some better views to be had just a bit further east on the slope of the hill. Wow, what a place. Well, I've come down from the summit. I've just come on a wee bit further. Just wanted to get some better views further down here. I can see down, we'll get comfy, there we go. See down Glen here, and the views north to the Cairngorms is it's just amazing today. It's crystal clear. Yesterday it was a wee bit hazy, but today it's pin sharp. I can see right up through the Larry Grew and over to Beinn and all these sort of hills. Then over here I can see Loch like I could almost touch it, and the Cairnwell and the Glen Hills are just next door to me here. Absolutely fabulous. It's great. And this top here, Beinn Lutharn Mhor is excuse me, it's a Monroe top. It's a measly 953 metres, which usually is quite big, but when you compare it to the big hills over here that I was up yesterday, Righ and Beinn Lutharn Mhor, it's just a wee brother to these ones. So yeah, the wind's dropped down. There's a wee breeze. It's not too bad, and the sun is shining. It's probably the air temperature's probably hovering around about 0 here. I think it was colder down in the dip at the Loch, and there's a slight breeze. The sun's out. It's actually very, very pleasant. So I'm going to loiter up here for a wee bit of time, just take it in, and then I'll head back down to the tent and strike camp. And then it's a long steep drop down to the bike with the big heavy pack on and then back out. This is just lovely. And at this time of year there's no midges, which is great, no beasties. This is why I like spring so much. Favourite time of the year. Mornings like these where the sun's out and there's not much of a breeze and There's no beasties, as I said, are just fantastic. So I wasn't in a rush. I just loitered and let time slow down. But eventually I got up and started a slow ambling hike back down the hill and around that loch and back to the campsite, where I didn't pack up immediately. I spent quite some time just enjoying this beautiful spring weather high at a mountain loch. Does it get any better than this? Oh, so nice. What time are we at now? God, it's nearly 11 o'clock. And I've spent a bit of time I've just found a wee seat. I had a second breakfast, finished off my coffee, another Scotch egg, another bar of Snickers. But what's really struck me today, there's a light breeze, it's beautiful. It's actually quite warm in the sunshine now. Still patches of frost kicking about on the ground, bits of ice and what have you, but just listening, the amount of grouse, and I don't know what type of birds they are. I've been sitting and listening to those. It must have been for about 45 minutes, and the sound of the waves off the loch lapping the shore. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Sometimes you've just got to take a bit of time out and enjoy it when it's like this, days like this. Absolutely fabulous. So yeah, I think I better start thinking about heading back down, because as I said, there's still a long way to go to get back to the car. The tent's not down yet, it's over there, but when I was making my coffee I did get the sleeping bag and the sleeping mat away. But yeah, what a day. Fingers crossed there's more of these to come in the coming weeks and months. Right, let's go and get the tent down and head down the road. Having got the tent down and all that gear back into the rucksack, I used that handy peat hag as a wee seat to allow me to easily get the backpack onto my back. Sometimes do that if the option's there. Saves you having to lug it around your shoulders. Just a wee tip for you. Anyway, backpack on, and it was now time to head down the glen and get back to the bike. And it was just such a lovely day. It was, the birds were singing and the sun was out, and yeah, just one of those days which I'll remember this trip for a long time. Absolutely beautiful and fantastic. So after ambling my way back down the head of the glen, past those lovely waterfalls, I was soon getting down onto the floor of the glen where my bike was stowed away. And I was just taking my time in this day. I met a few day hikers coming up the glen and chatted to them, and just took my time, enjoyed the views and the wildlife, and got back to the bike, which I was glad to do to get that big heavy pack off. All that was left to do now was remove some of the contents from my rucksack, put them back into the rack on the bike, and enjoy a fantastic freewheel back down the glen to the car. great adventure this had been. Until the next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next adventure.